I am Bridget Todd Robbins with the Lacrosse Youth System of Care, and I am so privileged to be up here introducing these two amazing individuals. I'm in the fourth year of my position, and I asked them to present today because I don't think our community knows what these two individuals really bring to some of the neighborhoods that we work in. So today we have Sarah Havens from the Gundersen Health Systems and Teri Wildt from Mayo Clinic Health Systems to really share how their organizations are helping to revitalize our neighborhoods and schools through their partnerships. Sarah is the director of the Office of Population Health at Gundersen Health System, and she leads strategic programming that is designed to meet the identified needs of our communities. She has been engaged with the Powell, Pogue, Hamilton neighborhood and the Hamilton School for several years, working as a partner to help improve health and quality of life. Teri is the director of community engagement for Mayo Clinic Health System in Southwest Wisconsin, and her role also includes building relationships and identifying opportunities for collaboration. And she has also engaged in partnerships with the Washburn Neighborhood and with both Lincoln and Neighborhood School and Hamilton schools. So please welcome Sarah Havens and Teri Wildt.
Well, thanks again for having Teri and I. When Bridget asked us to present, we were like, fine. But we really don't have a lot to say that we don't think you already know because of some of the great partnerships that are occurring in your schools already. But what the information we have is hoping to enhance what you already know, or maybe turn on some new light bulbs and say, hey, why didn't I ever think of that organization or that business as a partner? So we're hoping that today you'll leave with some of those new ideas, or perhaps some of those partners that you weren't even considering could potentially be a partner, and how they could be engaged in the great work in your individual schools. So I'm Sarah, and this is Teri, just in case we do have our name tags on. And yes, Mayo and Gundersen do work together a lot. So we're very fortunate that we too are partners in the La Crosse area and throughout the region. As we have our slides today, we hope everyone can see it in that corner. If not, it's okay. If you have questions, just raise your hand and we'll try to ask them as we go along. I think that would be okay. All right. So one of our goals today is to help identify for you some of the partnerships that we have for Gundersen and for Mayo in each of our respective neighborhoods. As Bridget mentioned, Gundersen works closely with the Powell, Pogue, Hamilton neighborhood and Hamilton School, and Mayo works very closely with Washburn. Thank you. Washburn neighborhood and Lincoln Middle School, and a little bit with Hamilton as well. We want to make you aware of these activities that are going on in the schools, and then also understand what the partnerships might be and how some of them might not be so typical. So it's important to keep that in mind. So as I talk about the Powell, Pogue, Hamilton neighborhood, I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is a grid of the city in the south quadrant of La Crosse. It probably doesn't matter. Anyway, we're in the south part of La Crosse. If you're aware of where the Gundersen campus is here in La Crosse, the Powell, Pogue, Hamilton neighborhood is just kind of north and east. So we're an anchor neighborhood, or an anchor organization of that neighborhood. And then Hamilton School sits within that neighborhood along with Pogue Park and Powell Park. We're adjacent to Washburn Neighborhood, which is where Mayo sits. Within our neighborhood, there's a lot of activity that's going on, that has been going on, and new activity that will begin to occur. And much of that activity is going on because of the joint neighborhood plan that was developed at least 10 years ago, and it has been updated a couple of times with the input of a lot of different kind of stakeholders. So it certainly is the neighbors first and foremost. The school has been involved. Gundersen has been involved with some of our staff, but then other city leaders, county leaders, other businesses, in order to make the best neighborhood that we can in partnership with the folks that live there. For any of the stakeholders, we're not wanting to do something too the neighborhood. We're working with the neighborhood to make it a great place to live, a great place to play, a great place to work, and a great place to learn. Some of the activities that we have within the neighborhood are those done in partnership with lots of different kinds of people. One of the things that we're real proud of at Gundersen, and Mayo has a similar program, is we have a housing incentive for our employees, where if an employee purchases a home in the Powell Hamilton neighborhood, we'll pay the value of their first year taxes. We work closely with the city of La Crosse in their planning as they continue to develop single family homes in the neighborhood, and that's a partnership also that Mayo has with Habitat for Humanity, City Planning Department. It could be individual builders, Coulee Council or Coulee Cap, etc. For those companies, those organizations that build homes for single families, because it's important as you have a neighborhood that there's individual ownership of that neighborhood, and studies have proven if you own a home in that neighborhood, you'll have more pride, you'll take more pride, and you'll kind of watch out what's going on around you so that you have more ownership in that overall neighborhood. La Crosse Promise. Everyone's aware of La Crosse Promise, I hope so. Anyway, that's a huge partnership in the city of La Crosse where funds are available for individuals in these selected neighborhoods. If you purchase a Promise home, then there are dollars available for further education for the adult or the kids in that home. Our neighborhood police officers or our neighborhood resource officers are those policewomen who are based actually in our neighborhood. And the point of having a neighborhood resource officer is for them to become friends, to become a resource, to become a source of information and assistance, not just a police presence to see what's going on wrong in your neighborhood, but our police officers that are our resource officers are stakeholders within our neighborhood, and they become familiar with what's happening, and if there are issues, they kind of are aware of where those issues might be occurring, and they meet with individual stakeholders. They might be meeting with the school, they're meeting with Gundersen, they're meeting with Mayo and other businesses to see what's happening, what's coming up, what might they be involved in if there's special events and such. And so they try to be present for many of those activities that are going on. Farmers Market, the mobile food pantry, working with Wafer to get that into our neighborhood. Gundersen runs a free summer meal program where kids can come to the hospital and actually have a breakfast or a lunch. And then we've had the Pogue and Powell Park renovations that have been very successful, and more to come on that. Powell Park will be getting a basketball court that we're so very excited about, and eventually it will be lit, but only available during daylight hours to start with. Other things that we've had, certainly Gundersen has helped develop the Gund Lofts, so that's an old brewery building just south of our property. We are attempting to reduce surface parking and create more green space, and the neighbors have told us they want us out of their neighborhoods parking our cars, so we're doing as much as we can to meet the needs of our neighbors and what they need for a high quality neighborhood. And then our partnerships with Hamilton specifically, this is just a list of a few activities that we have going on at Hamilton. We do some, I think typical for a lot of companies is to do a food drive or a personal items drive or a towel drive or something like that. So we do that throughout the year. We also have a wish list that we do around the holidays where teachers make up lists of what they need in their classroom. It could be items, Kleenex or pencils or teaching items that then our staff then they wrap up and provide then for some little extra touches for those classrooms. Our global partners have created their mentors in the classroom, and then we have also had an adopt the classroom where a department from Gundersen actually pools its resources and provides some funds for individual classrooms at Hamilton. The Hamilton School works very closely with our medical residency program, and for some of those kids who they find it difficult to get in to see a primary care provider, there are slots left available for those kids on a regular basis so they can get in to see a provider. We know that health is so important to be part of learning. We have to keep our kids healthy, so that's a way we're able to provide that support. Something else that we've done, and Teri will allude to this as well, we have corporate dollars available to provide for community organizations for those activities that align with our community health needs assessment and implementation plans. And we've provided some dollars to Hamilton to assist families who might be on that ladder of success, and they're also receiving benefits like SNAP or food stamps, but when they get that new job, they have to report their new income, and so then their food stamps go away. So what we've done is we've been able to provide some funding to try to alleviate that, to keep that hope and to keep that promise alive for those families so they can get that job and they can make that greater wage with benefits, and we can hopefully, with these few funds, hold them over until that first paycheck comes. We also own some rental properties in the neighborhood, and our school, we contact our school coordinator, and those homes for the rental properties have priority for families in the school who might need housing. We also do in-room programming. I've got some of my staff here right in the front row who've done some of that in-classroom programming for physical activity or stress management, and we're really proud of that as well. We have babysitting classes, and I think that's kind of typical of a health system to have babysitting classes. And we have tours of the medical center that become incorporated into some of the class routines. So these are just some pictures. Teri has wonderful, she's got way better pictures than I do. Anyway, pictures, we wanted to show kind of the progress of housing in the neighborhood. So from stick houses on up to beautiful homes. And, you know, just pictures of our food drives and kids involved in farm to school, the farmer's market and the mobile food pantry, and activities with Grow Lacrosse and kids learning about their food, and the neighborhood meetings that we have that the school is part of as well, along with the other residents of the neighborhood. And kids learning how to give an injection into an orange during some of our hands-on medical education days. Habitat for Humanity has Project Renew, and we've had volunteers assist in that. Certainly Pogue Park, which is not only a great place to play, but it has some great meaning for the history of our community. And then our neighborhood police officers are great friends for all of us. So take it away, Teri.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I'm going to take you through a similar walk through the Washburn neighborhood and some of the partnerships that Mayo Clinic Health System has with the Neighborhood Association, the schools, and other groups. So Washburn neighborhood, as Sarah noted, is adjacent to Polk Hamilton, and it is bordered by Jackson Street, West Avenue, and Cass Street for the most part. I always tell people that, you know, we say that Washburn is Mayo's neighborhood and PPH is Gundersen's neighborhood, and yet we recognize that Jackson Street is not the Grand Canyon. People do pass back and forth all the time. They don't fall in, they come back, so we have to always keep that in our minds, that we have to be able to come back and forth. No, not yet. So just some of the partnerships I'll be talking about. The Washburn Neighborhood Association, we have a couple of efforts that we do with them. The Matthew Center Boys and Girls Club figures very large into our work in the neighborhood. I'll talk about Washburn Corner, which is a little house that we have in the neighborhood. We also have neighborhood resource officers. We work with Cooler Recovery Center, and we're also engaged in housing, as is Gundersen. So the Washburn Neighborhood Association is probably the most active neighborhood association in the city. It's been around the longest. They have their own 501c3. They have a lot going on. They have regular meetings, and I or a member of my staff try and be there each month. As you can imagine, it's a little different living in a neighborhood than it is doing business in a neighborhood, and so sometimes, you know, what we want, what they want for the neighborhood are a little different, and it's important that we talk, that we collaborate, that we understand each other's needs and goals, and that we work together, because ultimately we want a neighborhood that's safe. It's a great place for people to live and work and learn, and we need to work together on that. This photo is from the annual Garden Expo that the Neighborhood Association puts on, and it's an event at Lincoln Middle School. Their goal with this is to bring people into the neighborhood, show hospitality. People haven't been there before. They can see what a great place it is to live, and it helps people get an early start on their gardening. And that was something that we've been into for a number of years now. And that's our chef, Heather Van Horn, who is leading a mobile teaching kitchen event there to help people see all kinds of great things to do with those veggies that they're growing. And this is the Washburn Garden. It's located on a block that we own, about 3/4 of that block in Washburn Neighborhood. We own that block because back in the day, institutions like ours used to buy up houses when they came available, and pretty much we would bulldoze them and either make parking out of that spot or have that land for future use. Thankfully, that is not going on anymore, and that's not the intent, but consequently we have quite a bit of land in the neighborhood. So this block is used, has been used since about 2012 for a community garden. It's not a community garden in the sense of like the Kane Street Garden, where people volunteer time and then they can take produce. These are actually individual plots that are leased to people in the neighborhood or Mayo employees or other folks who are interested. They can garden those plots for the summer. The fee is $30, and the neighborhood association manages the garden, and they provide a contribution to St. Clair Health Mission each year from the proceeds from the plot rentals. And St. Clair Health Mission's about a half a block away from the garden, so it's a nice tie-in. In this picture, you can see in the middle on the right-hand side, there's a small white building, looks like a garage. That's the vermicomposting center. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. On the left-hand side, in the same location, is the hoop house that accompanies the garden and provides some volunteer opportunities there. Just above the hoop house, you might see a brown and tan house in the background. That's Washburn Corner. I'll talk about that later. And what you can't see in this photo, because it's a few years old, is that Cooley Council on Addictions has their recovery center right where you would see St. Rose Convent in the background now. And so this is a newer photo, and that is Cooley Council on Addictions in the background. Just another shot of the different plots and how people use them. And then, as I said, the Matthew Center Boys and Girls Club figures large into our neighborhood programming. We have had a couple of our vice presidents involved in the Guitar Academy for a number of years. One of them is actually retired now, but they and other musicians in the community teach guitar lessons on a weekly basis to kids at the Boys and Girls Club. We also have one of our vice presidents serving on the Boys and Girls Club Board of Directors, so we have strong connections there. At the bottom, Laquida Becker Zaraki. Some of you may know her. We call her a behavioral health specialist. She has a different title at the club, but she is a Mayo Clinic employee who is stationed full-time at the Boys and Girls Club, and her role is to support club members, families, staff in whatever needs they might have related to mental health, mental wellness. She does great work. She's been there for a number of years now, and because of the success of Laquida's role, we now have a second behavioral health specialist at the Northside Boys and Girls Club. And we fund one of those roles, the salary and benefits, and the other one is funded by the Boys and Girls Club. And then on the right-hand side there, you see kids in a dragon boat. That's at the Big Blue Dragon Boat Festival. A few years ago, we created a youth division with the help of the Boys and Girls Club to engage some of the kids there. And it worked out so well, and we enjoyed working with the Boys and Girls Club so much that we asked them to become co-sponsors of the event. So we put on the event now together. They provide volunteers. The kids are still paddling along with the adults, and then they receive a portion of the proceeds. So this is Washburn Corner, the little house I was talking about. And Washburn Corner is at the corner of 10th and Ferry Streets. And it's a house that we happen to own because we bought it up when the time made it available. And for a while, we were housing our spiritual care department there. And when we were no longer doing that, the space was pretty much vacant. And so we were approached first to provide space for the neighborhood resource officers there, but they didn't use it all that often. And later on, La Crosse Area Family Collaborative asked if we might provide space there for their social worker. And of course, the idea with that program is to embed the social worker in the neighborhood and break down those barriers of transportation or stigma or maybe it's sort of a fear of institutions and place them right in the neighborhood. And Washburn Corner is just a nondescript, cozy little house, and people feel very comfortable going there to seek help. As I mentioned, the officers have an office there too, and then System of Care, our friend Bridget, is also housed there. And then that's our little free library. We installed that a couple of years ago, and employees at Mayo Clinic Health System will contribute books when we have books drives a couple of times a year. And then they sign up for a week at a time to be stewards of the library, which means they walk by each day and make sure it's well stocked and that it's in good repair. The neighborhood resource officers. Washburn was the first neighborhood in the city to have neighborhood resource officers. And as Sarah said, the whole goal there is not to keep an eye on folks, but to build relationships. And so that, again, breaking down those barriers for people to reach out and work with the police to help make a safer neighborhood. We've provided financial support for the program since it started about 6 years ago. And then in the lower right-hand corner, our two neighborhood resource officers, although I'm sad to say on the left, Tyler has left the force. He's gone into his family business, so that's sad, but we still have Officer Dan Ulrich, who's like the original guy and knows everybody. And I love to share this picture because that was taken last Valentine's Day. We had an event at our La Crosse campus for employees. It was called Love Your Community, and it was a chance for our employees to sort of understand where our partnerships are in the community and why we have these partnerships and what our great partners do to make a better community. And so the officers were there visiting with folks, and there they are visiting with Luna. And Luna is our facility dog. Luna works full-time at our La Crosse campus. She has her very own badge. She's a bona fide employee, although I don't know that she gets paid. She is a companion dog, so she's not a therapy dog. She is a dog that's trained to assist people who have disabilities. She spends most of her time in our physical therapy department helping people who are trying to regain mobility, but she also goes to the cancer center and she goes up to the floors, and she is happy to visit schools and organizations in the community. And also, if you have an interest in perhaps having your own facility dog, we can hook you up with folks who can tell you how you can go about doing that. Cooley Council on Addictions is the new recovery center is actually located on our campus. It's within the bounds of our campus. A couple of years ago, when Cooley Council knew that they needed a new facility, they'd outgrown their current location that they'd been in for 40 years. It was not a great environment. It was quite old. It wasn't ADA compliant. There wasn't much parking. But the one thing it had was location, and they really wanted to stay in the neighborhood. So when they came to us, as they went to many organizations in town to see about how we could all partner to make this happen, the first thought was, well, could we provide a financial contribution? And we could have done that, but as I said, we have quite a bit of land, and we are pretty close to where the original Cooley Council was located. So we ended up providing this plot of land, lease it for $1 a year. It's a 25-year lease. It's renewable, and that's how they ended up on our campus. And we're thrilled to work with them, and certainly acknowledge that there's a great need for recovery services in our community. And Sarah talked about housing, and housing figures large into both of our neighborhoods. Washburn and PPH are two of the oldest neighborhoods in the city. Consequently, there's a lot of really old housing stock. A lot of it is not in good shape. It's often bought up and turned into rentals. The rentals are inexpensive, but they're not places where most people would want to live if they had a choice. So it's important that we improve the housing stock in the neighborhoods, and that as we do that, we don't just come in and build new houses that are only affordable for some people, but not affordable to people who are relying on those lower rents. We don't want to push people out of the neighborhood. So we need a variety of housing, different price points, rentals, home ownership. We work with a lot of the same groups as Gundersen, City of La Crosse Promise, private developers, Cooley Cap, Habitat. A lot of what we do to assist that, we have open houses specifically for our employees to encourage them to check out houses in the neighborhood. And then we also have an employee housing program where employees can purchase a house in Washburn or PPH, and they get a one-time $5,000 grant. They don't have to pay it back. They don't have to live there a certain number of years. They just use it to buy a house and hopefully live near campus. I share this photo because I know Sarah showed it as well, a photo of the Wafer Mobile Food Pantry. And this was a bit of a failure on our part, and I think we have to acknowledge those too. We provided funding to help create the mobile pantry, And then we were all excited about bringing it to Washburn because we know that people don't have great access to food in Washburn. I think the closest grocery store is the People's Food Co-op, and that's probably a little pricier than most folks can handle. So we wanted to bring food into the neighborhood, make it easy for folks. So we actually installed power on our campus specifically for the truck and brought them in, and we got volunteers lined up, and they came in monthly for several months, and I think we had 2 people go in the whole time. So that was really disappointing, but I think you have to try things. You have to go in and do your best, and sometimes they don't work out, and that's okay too. They're going to PPH, and that's working out well, so it's all good. Yeah. Yeah. As far as partnering with the school district or with schools, we have a couple of partnerships at the district level, and that would include Farm to School, and we are a co-sponsor with Gundersen and the school districts in La Crosse County. For us, that's primarily going in and doing cooking demos for the La Crosse School District, and that's Chef Heather again. I think she's at Northside Elementary on the left. We've been a sponsor of Grow La Crosse for many, many years. We were originally their corporate sponsor, but they have done so well and have become so adept at fundraising that they don't need our help like they used to. So we are now just a major sponsor, but we've been involved with their curriculum development and their school gardens and also the expansion of the Hamilton Garden. We recently adopted Lincoln Middle School. That was something new for us this spring, and it's just sort of getting underway. I've got some photos to show of that, and then just a couple of things going on with Hamilton. So at Lincoln Middle School, we're sort of starting with the low-hanging fruit, trying to figure out how our organizations can work together. My caveat when we decided to adopt Lincoln was that we need to do things that are a win-win. We don't want to have our staff come up with all these ideas that we think are fun and great and wonderful that end up being a lot of work for the school. You know, we're supposed to be there to help. So that was a caveat, and so we're sort of working through figuring out what that looks like. But one of our early efforts, and it happened at the beginning of the school year, we put together classroom caddies, and there was one for each classroom, and we got a list of things that teachers typically have to pay for out of pocket or do pay for out of pocket, and our goal was to alleviate some of that for the teachers. So that's a photo of them after receiving the classroom caddies. And then, as Sarah said, we're also doing babysitting classes. Principal Murray told us that a lot of kids at that age are tasked with taking care of younger siblings, and they take it very seriously, but they don't always have the knowledge or the experience to do it as well as they might like. So the babysitting classes were, of course, about the standard babysitting stuff, but we also included safety, first aid, and CPR, and the kids in that class are doing compressions and learning to do it at the right tempo by doing it to the Baby Shark song, which apparently is the perfect cadence for that sort of thing. Thank a Teacher Day, we provided a big 6-foot card that was signed by many of our employees offering encouragement and thanks to staff at Lincoln. We also delivered flowers that day, and like Gundersen, we do food drives to help out with the pantry outside the school, which is actually a program of the Neighborhood Association, and we're going to be helping with a food drive for the harvest dinner baskets that go out to families in need. We'll be helping to put those together. And then just a couple of things that we do at Hamilton. Again, Grow La Crosse and the expansion garden there. And then Bounce Back, and forgive me, I'm not as up to speed on this program as maybe some of you are, but as I understand it, Bounce Back is an evidence-based program that was developed after a study in California. It's intended to help kids who've experienced trauma, to help them become resilient. And our role with Bounce Back will be providing a licensed clinical therapist 4 hours a week, and they will do group sessions with the kids that are in the program. They will meet with parents in the program, parents of the kids, and then also one-on-one with the kids. And so that's new, and we're excited about it, and really hoping that it can make a difference for kids who've experienced trauma. Okay, and that wraps up my walk through the Washburn neighborhood. Sarah and I threw together a very quick list. I mean, this was 2 minutes off the top of our head, the different groups that we partner with in the community. And I imagine if you times that by 6 or 8, you still wouldn't have all the groups. I was telling Sarah that I know we look at 225 or more funding and in-kind applications a year. I'm sure Sarah looks at more than that. So we deal and we collaborate with a lot of different groups, and we hope that a list like that gets you thinking if you're looking at how you might collaborate for a program at your school or in your community or with a nonprofit that you work with. We encourage you to think outside the box, think broadly, and think about organizations, businesses that might not typically come to mind.
So much of the work that we've accomplished and successful, it's been a win-win for whether it be the neighborhood as a whole or the school or Gundersen or Mayo. It's all about relationships, and I think, you know, with you as experts at developing relationships with all the children that you see each and every day, you know it's all about the relationships. And I think what's important is if you are looking for external partners beyond the walls of your school, to be thinking about, you know, what is current activity, what's going on around us, what might we be able to connect with or intersect with that the school could become involved or your classroom could become involved, and then who are the current partners with that. You know, it's important to step outside your walls, but it's also important to know within your school who might have relationships with key leaders or stakeholders from other organizations, whether they be not-for-profit or from the business world, and use those important relationships to help your school. It might be a relative or a best friend of, you know, the teacher that you're co-teaching with who can help make some inroads as you're trying to establish a new program or develop a partnership. So pay attention to who's doing what or who's partnering with you and who used to partner with you and why aren't they? Did somebody leave the school who was the key connector to an organization and it just kind of got dropped? So somebody needs to pick that up again. So who might that person be? Because at one point, an organization was very vested in your school, but all of a sudden they're not. So there's an opportunity there to revisit what might be able to occur. Find out what an organization is interested in that you are interested in partnering with and how might their goals align with your goals. I mentioned our community health needs assessment, and every hospital has to do a community health needs assessment every 3 years, and then we have to do an implementation plan that meets what those needs are. And for us, when we get requests for funding or for in-kind support or volunteer activities, we see how that aligns with those identified needs or with our implementation plan. And can that help beef that up a little bit? And then we can prove that it's not just Gundersen involved in meeting the needs of the community, that it's all these wonderful partnerships that exist that are truly impacting health and quality of life. So it's important as you're looking at developing partnerships to identify the needs that you have as well as how those needs match another organization. It might be a retailer that sells children's clothes and you have kids in your classroom who wear clothes. Maybe they are going to do a fashion show and they need some models who can help raise awareness of what's going on in your school. Or maybe they've not thought of a fashion show and maybe, there's a lot of parents here who buy clothes and let's partner with that business and have a style show. It's a real basic thing, but that partnership could grow into greater things, whether it be volunteers in your school from that business, or they might have access to other funding from a larger organization that they might be affiliated with. So just it's important to explore what those opportunities might be and how you can connect with them. And it's, as you know, the last phrase on here, it's not all about the dollars. It's about that in-kind support. It's just helping make that connection and help both of you have a win-win situation.
Okay, and Sarah's point about it's not all about the dollars is really important. You know, Sarah and I talk quite a bit, and we know who's getting what requests for funding, and one of the things that I think is always a real challenge for us is when we're aware that a well-meaning group has developed an approach to something, a problem, a need, they've thought it all through, they've come up with a budget, They divide the budget in half, and they ask Sarah to fund half, and they ask, me and Mayo to fund the other half. And, we like to see much broader collaboration. We like to see people thinking outside the box. Instead of asking a single group or two groups to fund an entire program, are there components within that budget that you can find resources for another way? For instance, if you have a need for food or something for meetings, can you get one of the grocery stores, one of the restaurants to partner with you in that? There's just any number of things you can plug in. Sarah's example of the models for the fashion show. I mean, where are the trade-offs? How do we make that the win-win? And my team is here today, or at least part of them, and they probably get sick to death of me talking about the win-win, but it's got to be that way because it's about collaboration and partnerships. It's not about, as I said, just sort of asking someone to provide the funding and then that's the end of the interaction. So I always encourage people to think about the groups you're going to approach and what do they want to accomplish. It's so easy to Google and see where they're already connected, see what they're involved in, see if they have employees that are going out doing volunteer work in the community. Where are they doing that? Just get a sense of what they're trying to accomplish. Compliance needs, Sarah talked about the community health needs assessment that we're required to do as tax-exempt organizations. There's also something for hospitals called the community benefits standard. We have compliance issues. We report to the IRS. We have to do so much in the community. There's not a set level, but we have to demonstrate that we are actively supporting the community as part of our tax-exempt status. So if something comes in and it helps us check that box for community benefit, community health needs assessment, that certainly, is very helpful. Employee volunteerism, we know that employees who volunteer in the community, who get engaged, are going to be happier employees. They're going to have more pride, more satisfaction. So if we have opportunities to do that, that checks another box. And then recognition, and I am probably more of a stickler on this than maybe Sarah would be. I get a little crabby about it sometimes, and that's because I spent 17 years in fundraising, and in those 17 years it was my job to make sure that if we said we were going to recognize a donor in a certain way, that we did it, that we got their name correct, that we didn't just take a shot in the dark and say, well, I think that's how we spell it. It's important, when a group partners with you, when they provide financial support, that you provide some of that recognition and do what you say you were going to do and do it well. Staying in touch, absolutely. Ashley is sitting here from my team. One of her roles is after we support something, an event or a collaboration, she provides them an evaluation form. I can't tell you how many times she has to badger groups to fill out a 7-question form about how many people showed up and how did you use the money. So, if you're working with groups like ours, keep in mind that we do pay attention to these things, and it could harm your ability to work with us in the future if you won't even fill out the 7-question form. Celebrate successes. Wow, you work hard, you do something good, let the world know about it. You're going to find it's much easier to bring on more partners and create more relationships that benefit what you're trying to do if you just let the world know about it. And you hear about good things in the community and you're inspired maybe to join in. And that's how we became the adopter of Lincoln Middle School. We had a corporate table, as we always do at the La Crosse Public Education Foundation Grants Award luncheon. And speaking at the event last year was Kent Handel with Trust Point, and he was talking glowingly about their adoption of Northwoods Elementary and how much it meant not only to the school but to his staff, and how people were happier and engaged. And so we heard that and we thought, well, oh my gosh, we could be doing that. Oh my gosh, Lincoln's 2 blocks out the back door of our hospital. Why aren't we doing that? So again, share those messages and inspire other people to get involved as well. As Sarah said, keep your eyes and ears open. Look for new partnerships. And then I always say, again, it's all about relationships, and the best way to build those relationships is to be out in the community. And I think the best partnerships are organic. You're sitting around the table, you're at an event, you're at church, whatever, and you hear somebody talking about something, and you link that to something that you've been wanting to work on or something that you are working on, and pretty soon you're saying, well, gee, you're doing this and we're doing that. How could we connect those? I mean, those are the kind of partnerships that really work well and that endure because they're not manufactured. They just come about organically. So I encourage you, if you're looking to partner with groups in the community, to get out there and rub elbows and get to know folks and share what you're doing.
So we can't stress enough thinking outside of the walls, thinking outside of the box. And Teri and I just have a couple of examples here that it's like, okay, we have some unusual partnerships. And so Gundersen has a teen car control clinic, and that came out of our trauma emergency services trying to prevent teen car accidents in order so teens could be driving better. So then they have this driving day, and they do spins and donuts in the parking lot, and they wet down the parking lot so they see what it's like to slam your brakes on when the pavement's wet and all that. Well, we need expert drivers. Well, and this is where the relationships and who do you know and who do you know, and one of our staff in the emergency room had a relative who was all about cars, and they were part of the Audi Club of North America. And they have this team of drivers who like to teach kids how to drive. Who knew? Anyway, they do. And so we team with Audi to put on the Teen Car Control Clinic. And it's those weird things, it's just some of those things that happen, and, find out who knows who and how can that connect to the goals that you have in your school, or those thoughts that you had. Man, I have this idea, and how could I make it work, and who could I partner with? And it doesn't always have to be kind of the same kind of organization or the same people around the table. You might need some of the same people around the table because they can figure out how to get things done in lacrosse. But it's really important to think outside the box.
And our example of outside the box thinking, I like to go to Mayo, Rochester, where people are maybe just a little bit more formal and a little bit more structured than we are here in La Crosse. And I like to tell them that I am the woman who brought worm poop to Mayo Clinic. Yep, it was me. And first of all, I have to explain what I mean by worm poop, which I mean vermicomposting, which is where you use worms to digest pre-consumer food waste, which is the food waste before it gets salad dressing on it, because worms do not like salad dressing. And you take that food waste and you let the worms digest it, and what they produce is vermicompost, which is very rich and nutrient dense and is great for gardening. So we had a relationship with Hillview Urban Agriculture Center for a number of years, and they had been running a vermicomposting operation primarily in conjunction with UWL. UWL had written a grant to get these vermicomposting units where the worms do their thing, and so they had been collaborating, but Hillview kept sort of finding a place to run the operation, and then within a few months they'd have to pick up and move, because for one thing, you can imagine that this type of operation with food waste, it draws fruit flies, it can draw mice. You don't want it connected to too much else. So they would have some problems, or maybe the lease would fall through or something, and they'd have to move on. So eventually Hillview asked us, gosh, does Mayo have a spot where we could do vermicomposting? And my thought initially was, well, what on earth, where would we put this? Well, as it turned out, we had a building on campus. I pointed it out in that first photo of the garden, the white sort of garage-looking building. We had this building that had been used as a carpentry shop for years. It happened to have air conditioning, and it had heat, and it had water. And those are three components you need to keep worms happy. And we weren't really using it, and it was right by the garden. So one thing led to another, and so we entered into a partnership with Hillview and UWL and Mayo for this vermicomposting center. It's a partnership where money was not changing hands. Each of the partners brought something to the table. We had a space, and we were willing to provide the utilities. Hillview had the expertise and the volunteers. UWL had the greatest share of the pre-consumer food waste that they wanted to recycle or they wanted to be sustainable in their practices. So they provided the food waste and also interns to help move the food about, help with the worms, do some studies, things like that. So it was a great partnership that came about because people sort of talked and people brought different things to the table, but it wasn't at all about money. So just an example of sort of out of the box thinking and how these things organically can come about. Okay, so we babbled on for quite a while. Any questions that we can answer? Okay, I think we're good if you're good. Thank you so much for coming today. Appreciate it.